Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this very nice and simple beginner-friendly PyQt5 project. So in this project, what you're going to do is create this interface, design it, style it, create everything related to the interface using PyQt5, and then you're going to write some Python code, use some external Python libraries, which will allow you to send emails using your real Gmail account. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email from one Gmail account to another. These two accounts are like burner accounts that I created just for the purpose of this video. I do recommend you create a separate account for sending some emails. I don't want you to use your own personal account. I'll get more into this throughout the video, but for now, just know that you will need to create a new Gmail account within this video. Now this video is totally beginner friendly. You can definitely follow along if it's your first time using PyQt5. I will walk you through the steps to design this UI step by step and explain every single thing as we go. The only thing I ask of you is to have PyQt5 installed. If you don't, I have a very short video, 4 minutes, in which I show you how to install both PyQt5 and QtDesigner and how to set them up. QtDesigner is also essential for this tutorial because we're going to use it to design our interface. Alright, so without further ado, let's just get started. Source code is in the description as always, and yeah, let's just get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to code everything related to PyQt5. So we're going to design the UI, create it, style it, fix it up, then load it into our Python code, and then in the second part of the video, we're actually going to write the functionality to send the emails. So first things first, here I have this empty project in Visual Studio Code. However, in your case, you can use any text editor that you like or are comfortable with, so long as you can run Python, so long as you have PyQt5 installed, of course, the usual stuff. So I'm using VS Code. Here in this empty project, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file, and it's going to be called main.py, and this will be where we will write our Python code. Other than that, that's really all I want to do in VS Code for now. I'm going to jump into PyQt5's QtDesigner, which is this guy right here, and this is where we're going to design our UI. So first things first, you have a new form. We're going to select a main window. So our form will be a Q main window since our application will only have one window anyways. And then I'm just going to press on create. This will pull up this default main window right here. So the main window, it has a menu bar, it has a status bar. We're actually not going to use these guys in this tutorial. So for now, what we're going to do is just design stuff inside the central widget right here, which is the main part. This is where we will put all our different widgets. So we need a few widgets right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll here in this widget box and come here to input widgets. We're interested in a line edit. This is where we're going to write who the recipient is of our email. So this is a line edit. Then we also will need a text edit for sending our email. So this is where we'll write the contents of our emails. We will need a label also. So this will be the label, and this one will say recipient. And then we will also need another label. We'll put this one right here. And this label will actually say body. So let's just go with email body. Okay, so this is the content of our interface for now. So this is what it looks like. Obviously, it looks super messy and it doesn't really look like a very useful interface for an application. Now you can come here and preview it. So we go to form and preview. This will show us how this interface will look like after we load it into our Python code. So this is how it will look like through Python without all the grids and the dots and all the things that help us design. This is how it will look upon execution. Now, if we resize it, as you can see, it's not really responsive. Everything really stays in one place. So it's not really the best UI out there. And of course, it doesn't really look that great either. So what we're going to do is a very simple trick. We're going to come here to our central widget. We're going to right click on it and go to layout. So here, this will enable us to lay out our widgets in a special way. What I'm going to go with is the easiest manner possible, which is layout in a grid. Now what this does is it stretches out everything, it positions them, and it lays them out in a proper grid. Now, if I preview it, as you can see, now it looks more like a real email editor and it looks more like a presentable application, and it also is resizable. So if I resize my window, you can see the widgets get resized with it. So this is actually a very neat trick so that you allow PyQt5 to do sort of all the heavy lifting for you, and you don't really have to worry about layout management anymore. Now, one last thing we want to add actually is the button allowing us to actually send emails. So we're going to need a button. We won't find the button here in input widgets. I think we need to scroll up, and you can come here, you find buttons, you have push button. And you can see we can just drag it here and it fits right into our interface. So this is the most basic format of our interface. Let me just rename the button, not really rename, just change the label on top of the button and say send email. So this will prompt the user to actually send the email. And all right, this is the interface we have designed. We have our central widget. Inside it, we have two different labels. We have a button, and here we have a line edit, which is an input line edit. This is where the user will input some text. And we have a text edit, which is a multi-line input. So this is where the user can write multiple lines. It makes sense to include this for the email because the email itself will be multiple lines. However, the recipient's email address is definitely just going to be one short line. Okay, all right, so now we have actually designed the UI. What we want to do next is we want to save this UI. So we will save it inside the folder in which we are going to code. So here I'm just going to call this one main.ui, not io.ui, and save. Now that we've saved it, if we go back to VS Code, you can see this UI file was created right here. Now, if I open up this UI file, you can see there is a type of XML syntax inside of it. This XML syntax is the way PyQt5 saves all this information from the designer offline. So this is how they save it inside this XML file. It's a special format and it's a special type of file. You can see all our widgets, so you can see the central widget here, you have the grid layout, you have the QTextEdit, you have the QLabel. Everything exists in this XML file the way we already designed it in our designer. So the next thing we want to do is you want to use Python to load this XML stuff into Python so we have an application that can be ran and executed using Python. So this is actually pretty straightforward. Now I've done this so many times in multiple videos before, so I'm just going to go through it. However, I anticipate some beginners will be watching this tutorial, so I will also explain step by step what's going on. First things first, we need to perform our imports. So I'm just going to import from PyQt5.qt widgets. I'm going to import Q main window as well as Q application, and these are the only guys that we need for now. Next, from PyQt5.uic, I'm going to import load UI. This will enable me to load the UI files from this main.ui into my Python code, and you'll see how as I show you. And finally, I'm just going to import sys. I'm going to need this for execution, and you'll see why later on in the code. Now that I've finished my imports, I need to define a Python class. So this is really related to Python object-oriented programming. I'm going to name my class main, so you can call it whatever you want in this case, or we can actually call it something like email sender. And now this class will be inherited from the QMain window. So the QMain window is the superclass of email sender. This means that email sender will inherit all of the different methods and properties of QMain window. So the type of email sender is essentially a QMain window. Think of it like that. However, I do recommend you look more into object-oriented programming if you really want to program so many UIs using Python. So now that you've defined the class, you want to define the init function of this class. This is the constructor. Okay, sorry, we don't really need all of this. So this is the init function. This gets executed as soon as you initialize or instantiate an instance of this class. So as soon as you create an instance of this class, this function will be executed. It's init, so you're initializing your object. So in our case, what does the init do? First things first, it has to call the init function of the superclass. So we will say email sender self. So the super of email sender, in this case, it's QMain window dot init. So we want to call the init function of the parent class. Next, we want to use this load UI function that we imported to actually load the UI file. So I'm just going to say main.ui. Here you type the actual name of this UI file right here. And finally, you just have to also pass self here as well, because this is also part of this class. Now that we finished defining the class, we actually want to execute the application. So I will say if name is equal to main. So here I'm executing my main function. What I'm going to do next is define an app. So this will be an instance of Q application. Every PyQt5 application needs one Q application instance in order to be executed. And then this will also take as input the sys.argv. Finally, what I need to do is also I need to define an instance of my email sender. So I'm just going to say window is equal to email sender. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to simply show my window. So make sure that it's available for the user to see. Finally, I will just use app.exec to execute my application. Now that I've written all of this code, if I actually run this Python code right here, this will actually launch the interface that we designed within Designer. And as you can see, we have all the elements and the widgets that we already designed. It's also resizable, and it looks the exact same as we designed it. So this is how we were able to use our Python code to load this information and this design from this main.ui file. This is super important and super useful because now you're able to sort of separate your UI design process from your writing your code and the logic of your code in Python. So this is really nice and really interesting, and one of the main benefits of using PyQt5 as well as QtDesigner. All right. So now that we have designed the UI and we have actually loaded it inside Python, the next thing I want to do is I actually want to kind of style this UI and make it look a bit more presentable. So the way we're going to do that, we're going to come back to QtDesigner, and here inside QtDesigner, there's one thing you can do called the change style sheet. Now the change style sheet, this allows you to write some CSS-like style sheets that allow you to style your interface. For example, I can come here and I can say color red, and I'm doing this on the text edit because I right-clicked on it. If I press apply and I press OK, I preview my application again, and if I type stuff here, you can see the font color itself became red. So this is also super interesting. So we want to style it, but we don't want the color to be red, so I'm just going to Ctrl Z and undo. Now, one way to style multiple things at once in PyQt5 is rather than styling each widget individually, you will style the parent widget. If you come here to the object inspector, you can see that all these widgets here exist and their parent is the central widget. Or even so, the parent of the central widget itself is the QMain window. So we're going to come to the QMain window and we're going to right click on it and we're going to change style sheet. So we're going to type our style sheet right here. The first style sheet we're going to type is something called QWidget. So here I'm selecting all the Q widgets on the screen, and by default, everything here on the screen is a Q widget. So even the text edits, the labels, the buttons, the line edit, these guys are all types of Q widgets. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply say background color, and I'm going to define the color to be RGB, and this is going to be 333333. So this is one color to get this sort of grayish black that we're going to use in our application. It's a type of dark mode. So now if I press apply, as you can see, the background changed for all of the widgets that I had on my screen. Why did the background change? This is simply because we said Q widget change the background color for it. So you will do this for every Q widget on the screen. So this is what a selector essentially is in CSS. Next, I'm going to change color. Now, background color refers to the background color. Color here usually refers to the foreground or actually the font color. So the font color, we're just going to make it so that it's actually white. So we use 6 Fs right here to indicate that this is the color white. Okay, next what we're going to do, so we have style, let's actually apply this. You can see the font color kind of changes. Now that we have styled the widgets in general, what we're going to do is we will now style individually the text edit and the line edit. So we'll say Q text edit and then open up this curly brace again, and here inside the text edit I actually want to change the background color. I don't want it to be the same type of gray, I want a sort of lighter color. So I will say background color, and here what this will be is RGB, and it's going to be 46 46 46. Okay, and let's actually press apply. Now you don't really see any difference. Let's just actually press OK and save. And now let's preview, and now you can see that the background color for the text edit itself looks much different from everything else. It's a lighter shade of gray. And also do note one thing, that all of the font that we can type is in white. This is because we changed the font color of the parent widget. Alright, perfect. So now that we have changed the text edit, let's go back to our style sheet right here. We want to do the very same for the line edit. So for the same background color, what I'm just going to do is come here and I'm going to just type QLineEdit, press apply, press OK, and then preview, and you can see they are both now this shade of gray. Alright, the final thing we're going to do is change the background color of the push button, and that's going to be all of the simple styling that we're doing today. Just again, open up the style sheet, you can come here and you can go to Q push button, and then just style this using background color. And now we're going to say RGB, and we're going to go with 120, 120, and 120. Now press apply, press OK, save the UI, preview it, and you can see the button looks as if it's a lighter shade of gray than all of the others. So this is really not the most beautiful interface out there. It's not something that a front-end developer at Google developed, so definitely not. But it's just something that makes it look more presentable, especially as a beginner project. It looks better than using the default widgets that PyQt5 provides. If you just use those without any styling, it might look pretty bare, especially that we have a ton of text space and that can be too much white on the screen. So this is just the basic styling that we're going to employ in this application. So now that we have saved everything, we can go back to VS Code and confirm that everything also is loaded in the Python code. So let's actually run it. And as you can see, the modified UI is now available within Python. This is because this load UI function works dynamically and you don't need to do any changes yourself to your Python code. This UI will just automatically get updated each time. It's still resizable, by the way, and you can still use it like that. The last thing related to PyQt5 we're going to do today is we're going to handle the events related to the button. So because I have a button right here, what you want to do is you want to send an email every time this button is clicked. So how do we handle this on-click event? So we call this an event because essentially something is occurring, an event is happening. We're going to come here inside our init function and we're going to do the following. Let's say self.pushButton, and then we're going to say .clicked.connect. And I'm going to verify what each of these guys means right now. So self.pushButton, where did I get this pushButton variable for my class, even though I haven't really defined it anywhere? If you come back here into the designer and then you press on this button and you open up something called the property editor, so let's go view property editor. Now you might actually have this already open in your QtDesigner. For some reason I had it closed, but you might actually have this open. Anyways, you can change your windows using this view thing right here. But anyways, as you can see, the object name here, it's called pushButton. I can change this name to be email button if I want, and then just save my UI. So here, rather than self.pushButton, I just have to say self.emailButton. .clicked, it's exactly how it sounds. So here I'm handling when this email button is clicked, connect me to a certain function. This function will be called self.sendEmail. So where does the send email function come from? We're actually going to define it ourselves. And then this is going to be self.sendEmail. Obviously it takes self. For now, because we're not writing any of the code to send the email, I'm just going to print out email sent. Okay, so there's really no real sending for now, but for now this is what we're going to do. So let's go ahead. And now let's say press the send email, and as you can see it says email sent. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now that we have created the UI and connected the button to a function, the next thing we want to do is actually write the functionality and enable ourselves to send some emails. So this is really the purpose of this tutorial, and this is what I'm about to show you next. So for now, let me just close this and close this guy as well. So first things first, I'm going to add a few lines of code to this mail.py, but other than that, what I also created is an email_sender.py file. So if I go to email_sender.py, as you can see right here, there is nothing inside this file other than one single function and the function doesn't do anything. So it has a pass. Pass means that for now, so far, this function has not been implemented. There's no functionality within this function. All it does is simply get executed. It will just pass and nothing happens. Okay? So this function, what it does is supposedly it takes the recipient as an argument, and it also takes the email. And then what it does is it will supposedly send the email. So this is what we plan to do. And then in my main.py, what I want to do is simply the following. I want to import this using this line of code. So from email sender, which is the file that I created there, I'm going to import send_email. Now, why have I created a separate file for this, and why have I created a separate function as well? Why not just write all the email functionality right here in this same spot? The reason is simply we want to keep our code cleaner and sort of separate the PyQt5 stuff from the email sending stuff, since we're going to write a bunch of lines of code for the email sending part. Okay? So this is it for importing the email sender. Now after that, what I want to do is I want to actually call this function right here. And the way I'm going to do it is as follows. So send_email, and as we said before, we have two arguments. So you have the recipient, it's equal to something, and then you have the email equals to something. Was it email? Yes, it was email. Okay, so we have these two arguments right here. So here, there should be two strings. Here I should write something at gmail.com maybe. And then here is the actual text of the email, right? So this is the main logic that we want to do. But now, rather than write it through the code, we want to actually get these from our interface from PyQt5. So I'm just going to undo these and clear them. So how do we get these from PyQt5? Well, let's take a look. The recipient itself exists inside this LineEdit right here. And this LineEdit has the following object name, which is LineEdit. So I can do the following. I can simply say self.lineEdit.text. So this function right here, this will create, or this will actually not create, or this will get me the text from my LineEdit. And then here in the email part, what I'm going to do is I will say self.textEdit. And rather than .text, we will say .toPlain text. Since we are sending plain text emails, this is how we will retrieve the text from both the LineEdit as well as the TextEdit. Okay, so this will get me the text, whatever the user has typed in this LineEdit, and the email one will get me all the text in the TextEdit. So now that we have actually retrieved them, we pass them to this send email function, which exists in this email sender. Let's actually right now print recipient is, and then recipient, and then also print out email is, and then email. Okay, just to show you how this function is working. So let's actually run this app again. Let's type some email. So me@gmail.com. No worries, because we're not actually sending anything. And here I'm going to type, hi, how are you? Okay, we're going to press on send email. And then this printed out, recipient is me@gmail.com. And then the email is hi, how are you? Okay, so perfect. This thing here worked. We were able to pass this information from this code to the function send email in the email sender.py. So I'm just going to clear these since we don't need them anymore and get back to our pass function. Okay, so how are we going to actually code the email sending? Before I explain to you how we're going to do this, I'm just going to show you again the accounts that I have opened. So here I'm using two different burner accounts. So this one is called Code First Burner, and then there's this one called Tutorial Code First. So I was trying to be creative, but I'm going to delete these accounts as soon as I'm done with this tutorial, so no worries there. But this is for educational purposes only. I do highly recommend you create separate accounts for this tutorial. I do not want you to use your own personal account and then end up with a bunch of security problems and end up losing your account. This is not the point of this video. The point of this video is to utilize some PyQt5 knowledge to create an interface, and then some Python knowledge as well to send emails. The point isn't for you to create this entire system and use your own personal email in the process. So please, I ask of you, do not use your personal email. Do as I did. I created 2 separate emails. If you don't want to create 2 separate ones, you can just create one for the sender. So really, it's the sender that we're going to exploit its security. The recipient, it's not really that important. So you can use any regular email for the recipient, but for the sender, I highly stress you create a separate account. Okay, so these are the accounts that I'm going to use. We're going to come back to these accounts and we're actually going to change something in the sender account, which is this one, the burner one. And I'll show you how as we get there. But for now, these are my 2 accounts. This is what I'm using and this is how I'm going to write my emails through PyQt5. All right, let's go back to the code and let's actually clear and close the interface. So to do the sending, I'm going to need 2 Python libraries, and these Python libraries are the following. They are SMTP library as well as SSL. Okay, so I imported both of them. No installation is required. They are part of the standard Python library, so you definitely have them. You just need to import them. No need for any pip install or anything like that. So here is what we have. We have imported the 2. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to actually use them. Before we get there, let's actually talk about them for a bit. So these are 2 built-in libraries. What is SMTP library? SMTP itself, it actually stands for the following. It stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So this is what these mail services use to transfer this mail. And this is what Gmail is going to use to transfer our emails through this application. So this is the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And we're going to use it from within Python to send these emails. So this is essentially what it is. Now SSL, it stands for Secure Sockets Layer, and this is what will allow us to encrypt these emails and make sure we're doing everything securely in order not to just send things without any encryption. You actually need to have some sort of security context and actually use this in your application. You'll see more about these guys as we use them within the code, and you'll see how we're going to use these libraries and how this all makes sense sort of together. Okay, but this is the very first step. Make sure you import these 2 different libraries. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define a few things as I do right here. And okay, don't get confused. This might start looking a bit confusing. There are only 3 lines of code and we're going to walk through them together. So port 465, this is the port required for SSL. So you actually need this port in order to use the SSL encryption. Next, you will define the SMTP server. So the SMTP server is how Gmail will use this protocol, the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, to send your email. So this SMTP server has to be equal to smtp.gmail.com. So this is non-negotiable as well as this. So you guys have to actually write these exactly the same way I have them here. Finally, the sender, this is where it's going to differ for you. The sender itself is the email you want to send the emails from. So for me, this is the Code First Burner 1 account that I created. Not very creative name, I know that, but this is the email that we're going to use. In your case, as I mentioned before, please do create a new email account for this and write the address of that email account here. This will be your sender, which will enable you to send the email. All right. Now that you have added the sender, you can't just send from any email, you actually have to log in. So we will need to specify the password. Now this is where it gets tricky. Here, you don't actually need to write the password itself that you created for this account. As of May 2022, so very recently, this doesn't even work anymore, so you can't write your original password. We need to use a small hack in order to get around this and actually still use SMTP with Gmail. So this is what we're going to do. Let's go back to our burner account, which is the one I have right here. So this is Code First Burner 1. This is my Google account. What you're going to want to do is you want to go to manage your Google account and then select security. So here I have my security. And as you can see, I'm inside the security and you can see that I have enabled two-step verification. Now, if this is a new account, this two-step verification will be off. What I'm going to ask you to do is to simply pause the video and take 2 minutes to set up the two-step verification. This is necessary. Without it, we can't actually perform this email sending. So please go ahead, pause the video, use two-step verification, you just need to connect your Gmail account to a mobile number and then come back here. So now that you're done with two-step verification, I hope you didn't have much trouble with it. You're going to get this screen right here, and you're going to have a new tab right here, which is called App Passwords. Now, App Passwords will enable you to create external passwords for external applications to use to access your Gmail account. And obviously, we want one that will work with our PyQt5 application. So we're going to go to App Passwords, and then it's going to ask you to sign in, of course. So go ahead, sign in. So I've signed in, and as you can see, in my case, I have one app password. So in your case, you're going to have 0, and what you're going to want to do is come back here, select app, go to other, give it a custom name, maybe PyQt5 as I have in the first instance, or Python, or my app, or whatever you want, and then you're going to press on generate. This will generate a 16-character password for you. So let me see if I can actually access mine from here to show you. Okay, I can't, so I'm just simply going to come here and create another one. I'm just going to name this one Python app, and then press on generate. And this will give me a 16-character password, and this is the password that you're going to want to copy and paste in this password guy right here. Okay, so this is what you want to do, and after you paste it here, you're going to be able to access your email via this program that we built in Python. Okay, so this is simply how we're going to do it. You definitely need to go through these steps of creating a two-step verification for your account and then creating an app password. I'm not going to use the new one that I just created. I'm actually going to trash it. I'm going to use the old one that I created in PyQt5, and I don't think they're allowing me to show it to you guys, but anyway, the code for it is right here. So this is the password that was created for me the first time. Again, I highly stress, this isn't the password I assigned to this Gmail account. This is the password that was actually provided here when I created my app passwords in my burner account, and I gave access to an external app. Why does this work? Well, basically here's what it says. It says app password lets you sign into your Google account from apps on devices that don't support two-step verification. So it's sort of a hack. It allows you to sign into your account from this, so what they call an insecure application, because this application isn't like the height of security. This is just a demo project application that we're building together just to show off our PyQt5 skills. But essentially, this is what this small hack is doing. It's allowing us to access our Gmail, assuming we don't have two-step verification there. All right, so now that we're able to actually access this Gmail, we can move on from this and go back to our email account. As you can see, I'm getting maybe a bunch of security alerts. You will get those as you create those app passwords. This is why I highly stress for you to create a brand new Gmail account. I don't want you to do this on your own personal accounts. This is definitely not secure, especially if you actually leak this app password. All right, let's actually come back here. Now, one thing I want you to note is that here you don't actually have to type the password itself. You might have it be more secure by saving this as an environment variable, but for now we're going to keep it inside a string just so things are clearer for you and you can actually see where the email is, where the password is, and where sort of everything is going on. Alright, after creating the password itself, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use SSL to create a context. This will enable us to actually encrypt our emails. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to write these 2 lines of code, which I'm going to explain right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to say with SMTP lib, so with this library, the SMTP, create an instance of SMTP SSL. You have to pass things like the SMTP server, which is the Gmail one, the port, which we already defined up here, as well as the context, which we defined right here as SMTP. So you call this guy as SMTP. And then finally here, what I say is smtp.login. So I call the login function on my sender and the password. For now, all I did is simply log into this account. So this is what I actually wanted to do. Okay, so this is the code we need in order to be able to actually log in. Now the very final step that we will add is the following line of code, which is smtp.sendMail. So this is what will enable us to actually send the email we were talking about. We will send it from this sender to this recipient on this, so we will send these email contents. So this is the code that will enable us to send this email. Now again, we're calling this function send email from PyQt5. We're calling it on the contents of the line edit and the text edit. We send these recipient and the email to this function. It does all of this stuff right here, and then finally it will actually send the email itself. Now, let's actually verify whether this will work. So we're sending it from the code first burner account. Let's run the application and see whether this will actually work. So I'm going to press on run. Here's my application. Now, who will my recipient be? It's going to be the other burner account that I created. Let's go back here. And here, what you will see is this is the email. So tutorialcodefirst@gmail.com. Again, very creative names. Let's actually paste this. And here I'm going to type, hi, this is an email sent with Python, let's actually say sent with Python, great, and with a smiley face. So this is my email, and now what I'm going to do is I will simply press on the send email button. Now it says email sent, however the app is still executing. This print statement is this one right here. So now the app is executing, therefore this function is being executed. As you can see, it will send this information to this function, which will do all of the SMTP stuff to actually send the email. So now I'm waiting for the app to finish, and I'm still waiting for everything to happen. Actually, my bad, this app will not stop executing because we haven't asked it to. So the email should have been sent. Let's actually go to our other burner account. Now there's really nothing in the inbox. What we can do is refresh. If you still don't find something in your inbox, one thing you actually want to check is the spam. So we can see one in the spam, and there it is. So you can see code first burner 1. So this is the code first burner 1. And here's the email. So hi, this is an email sent with Python, and great. So why is this message in spam? I mean, it does look pretty spammy. The accounts are fairly new. I mean, if I was Gmail, I would raise a red flag. Now we're just doing this for the project purposes, so it's fine if it's spam. We just have to say it's not spam and tell Gmail that it isn't spam. So let's just go back to our inbox, find it here. But yeah, that's really cool. We were able to send an email from one Gmail account to another using Python. I mean, it keeps flagging it as spam, but yeah, that's really the point, not the point of this tutorial. Okay, so we were able to actually send this email using this interface that you have right here. So the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to add some minor validation just to make the application make more sense. So what we want is that we want to check whether the line edit is empty. By line edit, I mean the one for the recipient, because you don't want to send an email to no recipient, right? So you have to check whether a recipient here actually exists. Of course, there are further steps like checking whether the email format is correct, but we're not actually going to do that in this video because it's a very basic and beginner tutorial. However, if you actually want to see how that can be done, do let me know in the comments and I can just type it up real quick. But for now, what we're going to do is the following. We want to check if the line edit is empty. So I'm just going to clear this print statement since we don't need it anymore. I'm just going to check if self.lineEdit.text. So just to check whether this line edit is empty. So let's actually just indent this. What this is checking is whether there actually exists some text inside this line edit. Now else, in case it's actually empty and there's no text there, what we're going to want to use is something called a QMessageBox, which will enable us to create this pop-up window that will show us how that we have an error. So we'll just call this message, and it's going to be a QMessageBox. And then what we will do is simply message.execute. Okay, and this QMessageBox obviously has to be imported. We import it from PyQt5.qt widgets, so we will say QMessageBox. Perfect. So now that we have imported this, we can actually use it. Let's actually run the app and try it out. So I'm not going to write anything in the recipient. I'm just going to press on send email, and you can see I got a little pop-up right here Nothing is really inside of it, you just have an OK button, but this is a good starting point. This is how we will create a message box, which is the pop-up. Perfect. So now that we have created it, we're going to just modify a few properties just to make it look more like an error message. Firstly, we will change the icon. So we will say .set icon, and the icon itself will be QMessageBox.critical. So it's critical with uppercase C, simply to just say that you have to use the error icon. So let's actually press on email. You can see the error icon right here. So now we have this red X telling us, okay, there was an error that occurred. Other than that, what we want to do is we want to simply message.set text. So this will be the text that will be displayed inside this pop-up. So we will say invalid recipient. Let's actually run it back up again. Press on send email. You can see the invalid recipient. The last thing I'm going to change is the window title. So you can see here it says Python. I'm just going to message.set window title. I'm just going to call this error. This should be pretty self-explanatory. Let's run it. Press on this again, and as you can see, we have an error and we have this pop-up right here. Alright, so that's really it for this video. We managed to design this UI, send some emails using Python, and then finally include some minor validation just to have a few pop-up messages and not allow the user to send an email to an empty recipient. So that's really it for this tutorial. I hope you found it useful and I hope you enjoyed. Please do leave a like and a comment if you did, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.